Okay, welcome back. Killian McLaughlin, founder of Wild Ireland, joins us on the programme now. Killian, how are you?
Good morning, Greg. I'm very well, and yourself?
I'm good. When we were last in studio with us talking about this exciting venture, and it seemed my social media was just wedged with photos of people going to it. You must have had an amazing footfall. When you talk about business models and planning for the future and what might happen next, you know, it's crazy how the rug can be pulled from under us, and we have to encounter and deal with something completely unexpected, and that's exactly where you were at, like so many other ventures and businesses.
Absolutely. I mean, who could have foreseen a disaster like this coming down the road when all of this kicked off? And it's very disappointing in my first year that after getting such a positive response from the public coming to visit Wild Ireland and see the animals, that unfortunately now we've had to close the doors and close the gates and shut up shop, so to speak. Yeah.
I mean, the overheads are huge in your. I know it's not a business as such because you're very passionate about it and passionate about animals, but they all have to be fed, cared for, and looked after. With no money coming sort of through the door, so to speak, I imagine it's a burden.
Exactly, Greg. It isn't a business, it is an animal sanctuary, and that was the main purpose of setting the place up, you know, to rescue these bears and other animals that needed a new home. But at the same time, being open to the public allows me to have an income, and all of that money, I don't take a wage from Wild Ireland. All of that money goes into the care of the animals, buying in fresh fruit, fresh vegetables. We can't use supermarket leftovers or any food that has gone out of date, because the nutritional value in that food actually goes down. The longer items sit on the shelf, the nutritional value goes down. So all of the fruit and vegetables that comes in is fresh, because that's where, you know, that's why our animals in such good condition, because they get so well fed. The meat is all fresh bought in, and then we buy in concentrates and various grains and seeds and things like that to feed. So the overheads are huge. Added to that, the electricity and everything else, and of course my staff are still there working away. Thankfully, they're considered essential workers because they're looking after animals, but at the same time they need paid to look after the animals. So yeah, the overheads are huge.
And the bill for fruit and veg alone, I was told it's upwards of €600, and that's just for fruit and veg, not to mention whatever else is required for their diet.
It can be, it can be up in the 500-600 a week, yeah, depending on the time of the year. So throughout the winter, the bears slow down. Our bears didn't hibernate this year. Hibernation is a natural behaviour. They do it in a response to lack of food rather than in response to the cold. Mm-hmm. So if they're getting fed throughout the winter, they stay awake. Now there is a diet plan that can be followed that encourages bears to hibernate, and hibernation is a natural behaviour and something that I would like to encourage maybe next year. But now coming into the spring, their metabolism is firing back up again, and they're starting to eat a lot more as well. So they eat a lot of carrots, eat a lot of apples, eat a lot of fish. Fresh fish, as you can imagine, is very expensive. Trout and salmon are not cheap. So yeah, it's a concern, because we don't know how long this is going to go on either.
Yeah. The only thing we hope is that when these restrictions begin to be lifted, that things and businesses like yours, not businesses, but ventures like yours bounce back very quickly, because people will go, right, I want to get out of the house. What can I do in Donegal? Or, you know what I'm on about? And we hope that is the case for the likes of your venture. But what about sourcing food? Is that difficult at the moment?
You know, Greg, I was talking to the fruit and veg supplier last week. He was explaining to me that at this time of the year, a lot of the fruit and veg in Ireland comes from Spain, because obviously the weather's warmer there in the spring. They're a few weeks ahead of us. And a lot of the migrant workers in Spain have gone back home to wherever they've come from. Reason being, they're there in Spain illegally, but they get jobs on these farms, and they don't want to be laid off, and they don't want to get sick in Spain, because they won't be entitled to the benefits that would be payable to people that are legally in Spain. So they've all gone back home. So apparently the farms in Spain are not staffed properly. And yeah, there's definitely, I put in an order last week and a lot of the greens didn't come through, and our monkeys love their fresh greens, so a lot of that didn't come through, and we've had to replace that with other vegetables instead.
Yeah, okay, and the human food chain might see the results of the impact of that, although with Spain lifting their restrictions somewhat this week, in some sectors, maybe that will benefit in that regard. These animals would have become accustomed to seeing happy, smiling faces pointing cameras at them. Do you think they missed the company?
We do talks every day at different times throughout the day at each of the different animal habitats, and it's quite sad actually. The animals got to know the times, and they knew that they would get fed at those times, and they still turn up at the dedicated time for the talks to see the public, and of course there's no public there, so we do ensure that they get a little treat anyway, regardless of whether the people are there or not. But it provides stimulation for them, and particularly our wolves, which are very human focused, and they used to get a lot of entertainment, especially from kids running up and down. They used to sort of watch them and chase them up and down from the other side of the barrier, of course. It is stimulation, and the park is very quiet, and it's eerily quiet, in fact. Yeah,
and it's sort of reflective of the country as a whole, isn't it?
It is, yes, yeah. It is indeed. But we're taking no precautions. I mean, myself and my staff are self-isolating as much as we can. We cannot afford to get sick. I mean, if we got the COVID-19, that would be very serious for the animals. So we are just not taking chances at all, and looking after ourselves, so that we can continue to provide the care that the animals need.
And that's what this is all about. You care for animals, and the facilities there are absolutely amazing. Obviously, there's been documentaries that have been made recently. Do you think it will change people's attitudes to the type of work that you do?
I think
yours
you're
is
referring to the
Tiger King. Yours is an incredibly different thing, but you know how in our heads we as humans can conflate things.
Yes, well, I mean, I watched that Tiger King documentary, and it's shocking from a human aspect, of course, the human story and that. But with regards to, I'll not comment on the human side of the story, but with regards to the animal side of the story, Greg, I was horrified, to be honest. He claimed to have a sanctuary there. Now, sanctuaries don't breed animals for a start off. He was breeding tigers and crossbreeding them, and saying that he was increasing the numbers of the tigers so that they could be released back into the wild. From what I saw, his tigers were overcrowded. He was breeding and breeding and breeding. He was crossbreeding animals, crossbreeding lions and tigers to create ligers. Ligers can never go back to the wild. It was a complete scam.
Well, they were doing it for themselves. I mean, there's over 10,000 wild animal owners over there. It's purely for their own... to satisfy themselves. It's got nothing about conservation, I wouldn't imagine. I don't know the ins and outs of it.
Absolutely not. I mean, unfortunately, animals that are raised in captivity are very, very difficult to get back into the wild regardless. Proper conservation, Greg, is about looking after animals in captivity, breeding them in a certain environment, making sure that there's no inbreeding, certainly not hybridizing animals with each other, and the way to get cats back into the wild in particular is to raise them in isolation, which is very fitting for this time. But what they do is they raise the cubs where they cannot see people.
Yeah, but he'd them in the front room petting them.
Exactly. You know, those cats can never go back to the wild. So
and you'd wonder too the sanctuary element of the Carol Baskin too. I mean, I think she might have not been too different to the rest of them, but dressed up differently. But thankfully, we're blessed with something very, very different here in Donegal with Wild Ireland. You would hope.
Something I would say to people, if they want to support a sanctuary, it's very easy to do research about what their motives are. Yeah. Anybody that's thankfully we don't have that here in Ireland, and in fact we don't have it in Europe at all, where people are breeding big cats just for. I think Europeans maybe are a little bit more switched on to these scamsheries, I think they call them, petting and bottle feeding baby lions and tigers is not acceptable this side of the Atlantic. It is in America for some reason. But I think if anybody goes to America and they want to do a little bit of research, they can very easily and find out. Certainly, I mean, for a sanctuary to start breeding and crossbreeding lions and tigers makes no sense. The only thing I could compare that to is the dog pound or the ISPCA breeding puppies. It just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, they just want them to look pretty, and they think, a lion and a tiger, that looks pretty. It's nothing to do with the conservation of the animals. But hopefully now, Killian, our restrictions here are lifted soon, and I think when you can open your gates, I think you're going to look forward to big numbers, because we're all going to, as I said, kind of towards the beginning, Killian, we're all going to be looking for something to do, something that's different, something to get out into the fresh air, for crying out loud. We need more of that, and you're digging deep to make sure these creatures are being given absolute top care, as you always do. But even when you're not getting sort of, and I know, as you said, you don't take money yourself, it's all about the animals to you. But hopefully, as I say, we'll be back supporting you through the gates ASAP.
Absolutely, and I'm really looking forward to welcoming everybody back. We're all in this together, and thankfully, hopefully, that we'll get out of this and with as few casualties as possible. And I really look forward to welcoming everybody back to Wild Ireland soon.
Cool. One last text before I let you go. Well done to Killian. We were all wondering how things were going for you and your animals, so it's lovely to hear you on air, and you're such an animal lover. Well done. And I think that's a nice note to leave it on, because it's clear any time I speak to you that's what you are. It's just about the love of the animal. Do you like humans, Killian, or do you prefer animals?
Maybe I prefer the company of animals, but no, of course I do.
I know. I'm only messing. Take care, Killian.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye. God bless you. Thanks very much indeed. Oh, wait.